You are suffering right now because you believe you are separate from the universe around you. This profound misunderstanding causes your anxiety, your loneliness, your fear, and your sense of being a vulnerable stranger in a potentially hostile world. But what if I told you that you are not merely in the universe, but that you are the universe itself experiencing itself? That the boundary between you and everything else is merely a useful fiction? Today, I will reveal how this fundamental confusion creates unnecessary suffering and show you the liberation that comes from recognizing your true nature. If you continue living with this illusion of separation, you'll never discover the extraordinary power and peace that comes from knowing what you really are. The transformation I'm about to describe isn't merely philosophical. It's the difference between a life of constant struggle against reality and one of flowing harmony with it. The most profound deception in human experience is the belief that you are a separate self, somehow contained inside your skin, peering out at a universe that is alien to you. From your earliest moments, this illusion was reinforced. You were given a name, taught to say I and me, and encouraged to develop a personality distinct from others. This social convention is so pervasive that you've completely forgotten what you really are. You've come to believe that you're a tiny fragment of the cosmos, rather than recognizing that you are what the entire universe is doing right here, right now, in the form of you. Consider carefully, where did you come from? Your body grew from food, which came from the earth, which formed from cosmic dust, which emerged from the explosion of ancient stars. Your thoughts, feelings, and identity developed through interaction with others, who themselves emerged from the same cosmic process. There is no point in this sequence where something separate called you entered the picture. You didn't come into the world, you grew out of it, just as an apple grows from a tree. The apple isn't inserted into the tree from outside, it's what the tree is doing. Similarly, you are what the whole universe is doing in the particular location you call here. When you examine yourself closely, the boundary between self and universe dissolves. Your breathing connects you to the atmosphere. Your body is made of elements borrowed temporarily from the earth. Your thoughts arise from cultural patterns you've absorbed. Your very existence depends on the sun, the earth's magnetic field, the precise gravitational balance of our solar system, and countless other factors. Nothing about you stands alone or independent. The successful person recognizes this interconnection and flows with it, while those who struggle exhaust themselves maintaining the fiction of separation. Look at your hand. The atoms in it were forged in the hearts of stars billions of years ago. The energy that moves it comes from plants that captured sunlight. The ability to control it developed through millions of years of evolution. Even your decision to move it arises from a brain that formed from the food you've eaten and the experiences you've had. In what meaningful sense is this hand yours rather than a manifestation of the entire cosmic process? Those who understand this live in harmony with the larger patterns of existence, while those who don't waste energy fighting against the very reality of which they are an expression. The desire to control life is the natural consequence of believing you are separate from it. If you are a fragment opposing the whole, you must constantly manipulate circumstances to feel secure. But this approach is fundamentally flawed and exhausting. Those who struggle are constantly swimming against the current of reality, while those who thrive have recognized they are the current itself, taking temporary form as this particular human experience. Consider how trees bend with strong winds rather than rigidly opposing them. This is not weakness, but the strength that comes from alignment with reality. The paradox is complete. The more you try to control life as a separate self, the more life controls you. The more you struggle to secure happiness for your isolated ego, the more it eludes you. This isn't abstract philosophy. It's the practical reality of human experience. The minds that have shaped our world most profoundly all discovered this same truth. True power comes from recognizing your unity with the whole, not from opposing it as a fragment. This is the secret of those who accomplish extraordinary things while maintaining an unusual degree of peace and harmony. Instead of resistance, practice recognition. Not passive resignation, but active awareness of your true nature. The next time you feel anxiety or frustration arising from your sense of separation, pause and notice. Where exactly is the boundary between you and not you? The air you're breathing right now, is it you or not you? When it enters your lungs and its oxygen enters your bloodstream, at what precise point does it become you? This simple inquiry begins to dissolve the illusion of separation that causes so much unnecessary suffering. Your perception shapes your reality. Most humans live imprisoned by the concept of themselves as isolated entities, separate not only from the world, but from their own bodies, emotions, and thoughts. I have a body rather than I am my body. I have thoughts rather than I am thinking. This subtle linguistic pattern reveals the profound split in consciousness that characterizes what we call the ego. The universe you inhabit is not something external to you. It is you, experiencing yourself from a particular focal point of consciousness. The great sages throughout history discovered that the ego, the sense of being a separate self inside a body, is not your fundamental identity, but a useful social convention that has been mistaken for ultimate reality. Like the border between two countries, it's a conceptual line that has practical value, but no inherent existence. When this is clearly recognized, not as a belief, but as a direct experience, an extraordinary shift occurs. Action no longer comes from the sense of being a separate doer, but arises naturally from the totality of circumstances, just as the apple grows naturally from the tree without the tree trying to produce it. Try this experiment. For just 5 minutes, drop the assumption that you are a separate self and experience life as if you were the universe aware of itself here and now. Look around without naming or judging what you see, without dividing experience into me in here and world out there. Simply be the aware space in which all experience is happening. This simple shift in perspective begins to dissolve the artificial boundaries that create so much unnecessary suffering. While others remain trapped in the prison of imagined separation, you can experience the boundless freedom that comes from recognizing what you've always been. The fear of death reveals the depth of the illusion. You fear death because you believe you are this temporary form, rather than the formless awareness that temporarily takes this shape. But when you look closely at what you call I, you find no permanent separate entity that could die. The body changes completely over time. Thoughts arise and pass like clouds. Feelings flow like rivers. What exactly is this self that fears its end? Death terrifies the separate self because death is the ultimate proof that separation is illusory. Your life is like a wave on the ocean. It appears, has form for a time, then merges back into the sea. The wave doesn't die in any absolute sense. It simply returns to what it always was. Those who grasp this truth live with extraordinary freedom, while those who deny it remain haunted by the specter of their own mortality. Consider how your perspective would shift if you recognize that awareness itself, the knowing presence in which all experiences appear, is not something you have, but what you are. This awareness doesn't come or go, isn't born or die. It's the context in which birth and death appear, just as space is the context in which objects appear. When this is directly recognized, death loses its sting. Not because you'll live forever as a separate form, you won't, but because you recognize that what you essentially are was never limited to that form in the first place. The roots of human conflict lie in this same illusion. Nations, religions, and ideologies fight because they mistake their mental models for ultimate reality. They create artificial boundaries and then defend them as if they were absolute, never recognizing that these boundaries exist only in thought. The tragedy of human history is that we've been killing each other over conceptual divisions that have no intrinsic reality. It's as absurd as waves fighting over which one is the real ocean. Look at history's greatest peacemakers. They all shared the ability to see beyond these artificial divisions to the underlying unity. The most evolved minds understand that harming others is harming oneself, not as an ethical principle, but as a direct recognition of reality. When you truly understand that you are the universe, The very idea of violence becomes as senseless as your right hand attacking your left. This isn't idealism, but the most practical way to live once the illusion of separation is seen through. The next time you find yourself in conflict, pause and ask, what would this situation look like if I recognized that the other person is also what the universe is doing, just as I am? This shift in perspective doesn't mean you become passive or allow yourself to be harmed. Rather, it allows you to respond with clarity rather than react from the fear and anger that arise from imagined separation. This is the secret of those who manage to be both powerful and peaceful in their engagement with life. True freedom means liberation from this fundamental illusion of separation. Most people define freedom as the ability to satisfy the desires of their separate self, but this keeps them perpetually enslaved, always seeking fulfillment through objects and experiences that can never provide it. Absolute freedom comes when you recognize that what you truly are is already complete, already whole, already perfect. Not your temporary form, which is indeed limited and imperfect, but the awareness that takes this form, which is inseparable from the ultimate nature of reality itself. The most successful people in history were not those who accumulated the most for their separate selves, but those who recognized they were not separate in the first place. They discovered the paradox that what you think you must have to be happy, security, achievement, love, pleasure, can never satisfy you, while you experience yourself as a fragment seeking completion. The fragment can never be fulfilled because fragmentation itself is the problem. Those who truly thrive found the infinitely renewable source of well-being that comes from recognizing their unity with the whole. Practice this freedom by periodically surrendering the sense of being a separate doer. When engaged in any activity, experiment with allowing it to happen on its own, without a you doing it. Notice how the body breathes without you breathing it, how thoughts arise without you thinking them, how actions unfold naturally without you forcing them. This is not passivity, but the discovery of a deeper agency that comes from alignment with the whole. The less you operate from the sense of separation, the more effortlessly effective you become. The universe is not happening to you, it is happening as you. Every experience you have is not something separate from yourself, but is the universe experiencing itself through the unique focal point that you call me. This is not a metaphor or a spiritual belief. It is the literal truth of your existence that becomes obvious when you look beyond concepts. Just as a whirlpool is not separate from the river, but is the river itself in a particular pattern of movement, you are not separate from the totality of existence, but are that existence arranged in the unique pattern called you. Consider this. When you see something, who or what is actually seeing? You say, I see, but what is this I? If you investigate closely, you find that seeing is simply happening. Awareness and its objects arise together without a separate seer. The same is true for all experiences. There is hearing, but no separate hearer. Thinking, but no separate thinker. Feeling, but no separate feeler. When this is clearly recognized, the entire notion of being a separate self, inside a body looking out at a foreign world, dissolves into the direct recognition of reality, experiencing itself as all that is. The most brilliant minds in both science and spirituality have arrived at surprisingly similar conclusions. Separateness is an illusion generated by our particular perspective, not an ultimate reality. From quantum physics discovery that seemingly separate particles remain fundamentally connected, to the mystical experience of unity reported across diverse traditions, the evidence suggests that the universe is not a collection of objects, but a unified field of being temporarily expressing itself as apparent multiplicity. The implications are staggering. What you ultimately are is not separate from what everything is. When you operate from this understanding, life becomes less of a struggle and more of a flow. Instead of fighting against reality as a separate entity, you move with it as a manifestation of its intelligence. Rather than forcing outcomes from the limitation of your personal perspective, you allow action to arise from the wisdom of the whole. This is not passive, it is the most powerful way to live. Like the skilled sailor who works with the wind rather than against it, you accomplish more with less effort. Your actions become like water finding its way to the ocean, natural, effortless, and aligned with the greater pattern. Have you noticed how exhausting it is to maintain the illusion of separation? The constant vigilance required to defend your psychological boundaries, the tension of seeing yourself as vulnerable to a potentially hostile universe, the endless seeking for security that can never be found. It depletes your energy and narrows your experience. When you let go of this illusion, that energy becomes available for creativity, for presence, for joy. You stop fighting against life and start experiencing yourself as the life force itself, temporarily expressing as this particular being. Consider how much of your suffering comes from resistance to reality, based on the belief that you are separate from it. You're in traffic and you're late. Resistance creates anxiety and frustration. Someone criticizes you. Resistance creates defensiveness and hurt. You're facing a challenge. Resistance creates fear and avoidance. Now imagine encountering these same situations from the recognition that you are not separate from them. The traffic, the criticism, the challenge are all forms arising within the same awareness that you are. They're not happening to you. They're appearing as aspects of your larger being. The external circumstances might be identical, but your experience would be completely different. What I've shared with you isn't just philosophy. It's the key to a completely different way of being. The suffering you experience comes not from life itself, but from your mistaken identity as a fragment opposed to the whole. When this illusion dissolves, what remains is an unshakable peace and a natural joy that doesn't depend on circumstances. This isn't about positive thinking or forced acceptance. It's about seeing reality clearly, without the distorting lens of imagined separation. This understanding has practical implications for every aspect of your life. In relationships, you stop trying to get something from others to complete yourself and instead recognize the underlying unity that makes true love possible. In work, you act not from personal ambition alone, but from the recognition that your unique gifts are how the universe expresses itself through you. In difficulties, you find the capacity to respond with wisdom rather than react from fear. None of this means you become passive or indifferent. On the contrary, you engage more fully with life, but from a place of wholeness rather than lack. The recognition I'm pointing to isn't something you achieve through effort. It's already the case. You just haven't noticed it yet. It's like searching desperately for water while you're swimming in the ocean. You can't attain what you've never lost. You can only recognize what has always been true. This recognition might happen suddenly, like a flash of lightning, or it might dawn gradually like the slow brightening of day. Either way, it's not something you do. It's something you allow by ceasing to maintain what prevents it. The practices I've suggested, questioning the boundary between self and universe, experimenting with selfless awareness, surrendering the sense of being a separate doer, are not meant to create this recognition. They're designed to remove the obstacles to it. They're like cleaning a window so the light that's always been there can shine through clearly. The separate self cannot achieve unity because the very effort reinforces the illusion of separation. Instead, the illusion of separation dissolves when it's clearly seen for what it is, a useful convention that we've mistaken for ultimate reality. Don't take my word for any of this. Test it yourself. Begin today by questioning your assumptions about who you are. Look deeply at your experience without the filter of preconceptions. The truth of what I'm saying doesn't require belief. It requires only honest observation. The transformation is already happening. The only question is whether you'll continue to resist it or allow yourself to awaken to what you've always been. Remember, you're not a separate self having a spiritual experience. You're the spiritual essence having a human experience. The challenges, the joys, the pains, the pleasures, all of it is the universe exploring itself through the unique configuration that you call me. When you know this not just intellectually, but in the core of your being, the search ends. Not because you found what you were looking for, but because you recognize that you are what you were looking for. The seeker and the sought are one and the same. The freedom, peace, and joy you seek are not states to be attained. but your natural condition when the illusion of separation dissolves. They're like the sun that's always shining above the clouds. The clouds of thought and identification may temporarily obscure it, but they can never extinguish its light. Your true nature is already perfect, already complete, already free. The journey is not about becoming something you're not. It's about unbecoming everything you're not, until all that remains is what you've always been. Consider the implications of this understanding for how you experience everyday life. When you eat, it's not a separate self consuming something external, but the universe nourishing itself. When you breathe, it's not you taking in air, but the universe circulating within itself. When you meet another person, it's not two separate entities interacting, but the universe encountering itself in different forms. Everything becomes sacred when recognized as an expression of the same ultimate reality that you are. This recognition transforms not only your experience, but your effectiveness in the world. When you act from the truth of your non-separate nature, your actions have a different quality. They come from wholeness rather than lack, from abundance rather than scarcity, from love rather than fear. You become a clearer channel for the intelligence of the universe to express itself through you. This doesn't mean you become superhuman or never make mistakes. It means your activity aligns with the larger flows of life, rather than struggling against them. The great paradox is that you become most uniquely yourself when you recognize that you are not separate from the whole. Your distinctive qualities, talents, and perspective are not negated but fully expressed when you stop identifying exclusively with your separate selfhood. Just as each wave has its unique shape and movement while remaining essentially water, you express your individuality most authentically when you know yourself as an expression of the universal consciousness that animates all things. Throughout history, the most transformative figures, whether mystics, artists, scientists, or leaders, all touched this truth in some form. Their power came not from extraordinary separate selves, but from allowing something greater than the separate self to work through them. They knew, either explicitly or intuitively, that they were not the doers of their deeds, but vehicles for a greater intelligence. This didn't diminish their accomplishments, but placed them in a larger, more meaningful context. As you move through your life from this understanding, you'll find that challenges don't disappear, but your relationship to them fundamentally shifts. Instead of seeing them as obstacles to your separate fulfillment, you recognize them as aspects of your larger self calling for integration and healing. A difficulty isn't something happening to you, but a part of the universe that you are inviting your conscious attention. This perspective doesn't eliminate pain, but it transforms suffering by removing the additional layer of resistance that comes from imagined separation. The beauty of this recognition is that it's always available, in any moment, regardless of circumstances. It doesn't depend on achieving certain states of mind or having particular experiences. It's simply the truth of what is, available to be seen whenever you look without preconceptions. Whether you're in joy or sorrow, health or illness, success or failure, the fundamental reality of your non-separate nature remains unchanged. It's the context in which all these temporary conditions appear, just as the ocean remains the ocean regardless of whether its surface is calm or stormy. What I'm pointing to is both the simplest and the most profound truth. You are the universe experiencing itself, not metaphorically, not spiritually, but literally and actually. The boundary between you and everything else exists only in thought, not in reality. When this is clearly seen, your entire experience of life transforms. Not because anything external changes, but because you recognize what you've always been. The boundless awareness in which all experiences arise, exist, and dissolve. This recognition is the end of seeking and the beginning of living from truth. It's available right now, in this very moment. Not as something to achieve, but as something to notice. The universe is not elsewhere, waiting to be joined. It's what you already are, waiting to be recognized. When you know this deeply, beyond all doubt, you've discovered the ultimate secret. There is no separate self to enlighten, because what you are is the light itself.